This is the Yay or Nay Show with Alex C. A sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. And now, here is Alex C.
All right, here we go with his Yay or Nay Show with Alex C., a sports show for sports fans by a sports fan. Let's kick off today's show with some of the polls that have just come back. All right, now, one of them is, can the Phoenix Suns win the NBA title without Devin Booker? As you know, he was injured. I'm going to give you an update on that here in a few moments. But again, he was injured in Game 2 against the New Orleans Pelicans. And I'll give you an update, like I said, here in a few. But the question, can the Phoenix Suns win the NBA title without Devin Booker? 87% of the people that voted said nay, that the Phoenix Suns cannot win the NBA title without Devin Booker. The other question is, do you think Kyrie Irving should have been suspended for flipping off fans in Boston? We all know about the incident that took place in Game 1. Thank heavens no incident took place in Game 2. However, that was a very lackluster performance by Kyrie Irving, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But again, the question is, do you think Kyrie Irving should have been suspended for flipping off fans in Boston? It was a 60-40 split. 60% of the people that voted said nay. They do not believe Kyrie Irving should have been suspended. He was not. But there were some people in the national sports media that were indicating that their thoughts were that he should have been suspended. I don't know. I'd say if it was a second offense, I probably would say that he should be suspended since, at least to the best of my knowledge, this is a first offense. I have no problem with the punishment that he received. Another question, this goes back to a conversation that we were having about Tiger Woods and role models and athletes as role models. And the question is, do you think athletes are role models? This one came back 53-47, and 53% of the people that voted said yay, they believe athletes are in fact role models. I am among the 47% who thinks that athletes are not role models. Look, the only role models, in my opinion, that should be role models for their parents are for their kids, are parents. That's my thoughts on it. But okay, let's move on. Real quickly. Before I do that, I need to do this before I could even talk about what I wanted to talk about next, which is the results from last night's games. Sorry, I forgot to pull them up, so I had to pull them up really quickly. All right, so let me say this first and foremost. Let's start with the Bulls and the Bucks. Now, the series is tied 1-1, and I did not watch Game 1. I did watch a good portion of Game 2. I did not watch Game 1, full disclosure. Watched the highlights, saw the Bulls battle, and it looked like they had a shot. And there, of course, is an argumentative point that if a whistle would have been blown correctly, meaning that the star for the Bucks would have gotten his sixth foul like he should have and fouled out of the game, the Bulls would have, in fact, won Game 1. But the whistle, the call, Antetokounmpo not fouling out, and the Bulls subsequently lose Game 1. But had he fouled out like he should have, the argument is, and many have made it, that the Bulls probably would be up 2-0, and it would not be a 1-1. Very, very interesting to me, because what have I said about the Milwaukee Bucks? Number one, the team with the most amount of pressure to win the NBA Finals is the Milwaukee Bucks. Why? There is an asterisk next to the NBA title from last year. They didn't really win it. They really weren't the best team out of the East. They didn't really win the East because all of their competition had their superstars knocked out, just like the Phoenix Suns did in the West. And all they had to do was stay healthy to walk into the NBA Finals last year. That's how they got there. They weren't the best team. They weren't close to being the best team. They're a team that always plays great in the regular season, and then they fold in the playoffs. That's probably what should have happened to the Milwaukee Bucks last year, but it didn't happen because all of the competition had their superstars knocked out. Not just a star, not just a player. All the superstars were knocked out. And all Milwaukee had to do was waltz their way into the NBA Finals, which is what they did. And then they beat up on another team that should not have been there, and that was the Phoenix Suns. So I have said it wasn't a real championship. So when I hear like these guys in the national media running their mouths, talking about how the Milwaukee Bucks are the odds-on favorite to be the NBA champs once again, and how they're the best team. I even heard Mike Greenberg talking about it today. The Milwaukee Bucks play the best team basketball, and they're the best team in basketball, and they have the best roster, and they are definitely the odds-on favorites to win. But now that, Middleton is hurt, is that going to diminish their opportunity to do a repeat? First of all, they were never the NBA champs last year to begin with. Let's get that clarified. Secondly, to show you just how average this Milwaukee Buck team is, they're losing to a Chicago Bulls team who is bottom of the barrel East. Bottom of the barrel. There's a reason why they are in the position that they're in, and it's because the Chicago Bulls are not very good, and they're shorthanded. They've got injuries to their star players, and yet they gave Milwaukee all they could handle. And again, if it wasn't for Antetokounmpo getting the lucky whistle and not getting his sixth foul like he should have, the Bulls would be up 2-0 right now. But the bottom line is the Bucks struggled with the lowly Chicago Bulls to win game one, and then get their butts handed to them while the Bulls dominated, absolutely wiped the floor with the Milwaukee Bucks all night long last night. And these guys are talking and have been talking about the Milwaukee Bucks being one of the best teams in the NBA. Give me a break, man. What games are you watching? What did you not see last season in the postseason that I saw? How is it that I saw what I saw and you guys don't? They were not the champions. They were not the best team in basketball. Every other team superstars went down. They won the title. They haven't looked like any kind of a championship caliber team this year throughout the regular season. They're average. Well, I take it back. They're a little above average, but they're not the best team in basketball. They don't even have the best record in the NBA. So they don't have the best record in the East. So to sit there and talk about how the Milwaukee Bucks are the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals, I mean, again, and you're supposed to be professionals that do this for a living, and you're claiming the Milwaukee Bucks are one of the best teams in basketball, and they're struggling against the lowly, pathetic Chicago Bulls who are not built to win anything right now. And they're struggling. At full strength, they struggled to win game one, and they got the floor wiped with them. They look like a bunch of high school kids getting beat by the Chicago Bulls last night. So this wasn't a series where I thought Milwaukee would lose. I thought they'd win this series, and then they'd move on, and more than likely whoever they played next they would lose to. But the fact that they are struggling as much as they are with the Chicago Bulls is an embarrassment, not only to the Milwaukee Bucks, but to the national media who's been trying to feed you this garbage narrative about how Milwaukee is the best team in basketball and about how Milwaukee is the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals. They're struggling against the lowly, pathetic Chicago Bulls who are not built to win a dang thing. And it looks like Milwaukee's probably going to lose this series because based on the performance of these first two games, because there was nothing, zero, zilch, nada impressive about game one. That's the other thing. For these guys to watch game one and for the national media to still sit there and try and feed you the narrative about how Milwaukee's one of the best teams in the NBA, yet they had to struggle to beat the Chicago Bulls in game one. That shit on their home court, might I add. Milwaukee was on their home court and they struggled against the lowly Chicago Bulls in game one. And yet the national media still wants to try and feed you the narrative about how they are the best team in the NBA and the odds-on favorite to win the NBA Finals. They're not going to get to the NBA Finals. And by the way, FYI, go back and research all my earlier podcasts, especially when we were talking about the start of the NBA season. I said, and I quote, big, bold prediction, Milwaukee Bucks will not make it to the NBA Finals. That was my big, bold prediction. And my reason was for the ones I just got done stating. They didn't win the title legitimately last year. They're not the reigning defending NBA champs, and they're not good enough to make it to the NBA Finals, and they won't make it to the NBA Finals. And again, I've sat here and I've said with a big, bold prediction before the season started, the Milwaukee Bucks would not make the NBA Finals again. I also said the same thing about the Phoenix Suns. My big, bold prediction was the Phoenix Suns would not make the NBA Finals again. But right now, we're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm probably going to be proven right earlier than I thought because I don't think they're going to get past the lowly Chicago Bulls. All right, another game. I know a lot of people don't like Doc as far as being a head coach. 76ers, Raptors. I was really having to watch the score box in a lot of this one because I was watching the Nets Celtics game and the 76ers Raptors was going on while the Nets and Celtics game was happening. And so I was watching it in the score box. But the thing is that, the 76ers, they were getting their butts kicked pretty much the whole first half. I mean, the 76ers started to come back in the second quarter. I think they got it down to 10 points at halftime. And then they really had to fight their way back in the third quarter and fourth quarter. But it was a struggle for them to get back into it. And then, overtime, and then finally take the lead and win in very exciting fashion. But a lot of people talk about they didn't like the way that the 76ers were coached. And they continue to talk about the way that the 76ers are coached and that it's, their coach's fault, the reason why they had such a difficult time last night with the Toronto Raptors. And Doc Rivers, gotten some flack for some recent history as far as playoffs go. We all know about that story, right? But here's the thing. I'm going to disagree with the national media once again. And again, I don't disagree with the national media because it's fun or because it's my niche or because it's the thing to do. I'm just disagreeing because here's the reason why. And I'll always tell you the reason why. But again, I don't disagree with the national media because it's my niche or it's my thing or it's, what I'm all about. No, there's a lot of times with, the national media that I agree. And there's a certain percentage of the national media that I agree with certain things they say, but then there's the part of the national media that says other things, and obviously I'm going to disagree. But the national media as a consensus seem to have this thing about Doc Rivers being this big failure as far as playoffs go. Great regular season coach, and he gets a bad rap when it comes to the playoffs. Now, in other instances and other examples, maybe that's true because, I wasn't paying that close attention to Doc Rivers, to be honest, as a head coach. So again, maybe at previous situations, maybe that holds true and maybe that is the reality. But with the 76ers, I think he's done an outstanding job. And here's the thing. In regards to last night's game, because Charles Barkley was talking about it and saying it was bad play calling and so on and so forth. And Joel Embiid, what's he doing, outside the box? He needs to be inside the box. And I agree. That size, he should be dominating the rim, dominating the boards. Absolutely. And I think he should be more of an inside player than what he is and maybe shoot some mid-range jumpers if he wants to. But the shooting the threes and all that, that's really unnecessary for a 7-footer. And I think coaches should stop these 7-footers from wanting to do that because outside of their egos, it doesn't do anything for the team. Maybe it builds their ego. Maybe it strokes their ego, but it doesn't do anything for the team. But here's the thing. Speaking of egos, Joel Embiid, that's how he wants to play. He wants to play outside the key. He wants to play top of the key, and he wants to shoot threes. Again, just like AD for the Lakers, he doesn't want to play the true five for whatever the reason is. And folks, keep in mind, Joel Embiid's never been known for being a three-point shooter, right? He's never been known for being a three-point shooter. He's a big man in the middle, dominates, gets dunks, grabs boards, gets assists. He's got a good eye for the court, gets some good passes. He's good at that. He's great at that, okay? But this outside stuff is just stuff that he's tried to develop year after year after year after year, and he's never really been a three-point shooter, a three-point threat, and he doesn't shoot it at a high clip now, shooting better than ever before, but that's because he's throwing it up so much. But the thing is he should stick to the paint, like Charles said, stick to the boards, dominate inside, be the dominating player he's always been known to be, and instead, he's trying to be like a power forward or actually a guard and shoot three-pointers. And doesn't make any sense. But that's not Doc Rivers' problem. That's my point. It's not his fault that this is happening. The reason why it's happening is because Joel Embiid doesn't want to play the 5 the way a 5 should be played. And I could also make the argument it's the reason why the 76ers season wasn't as good as it should have been is because he's trying to build and design his game as more of a guard than an inside man, and his change in game is hurting the 76ers. I could easily make that argument. That's the problem that they have is the fact that he wants to shoot from the outside. He's not that good at it. He's better than before, but he's not that good at it. And when he shoots from outside, what does that do? Well, that stops anybody from the inside having the ability to get the boards. So now you got littler guys trying to dominate the boards. They're having to crash the boards, and they're having to work harder to get the rebounds. But if Joel Embiid were inside like he should, first of all, he'd be shooting at a higher percentage clip because he'd be inside where he should be, where he can dominate, and he'd be getting the boards from everybody else, including his own, and getting putbacks and getting a lot of points. And I think that he would help the team a lot more if he played the traditional 5, but he doesn't. Again, it's because of his ego. Just like Antetokounmpo, never been good at shooting threes, working at it. Now he's getting a little bit better at it, and he wants to be known for some reason as a three-point shooter instead of being a true 5 and dominating in the middle like big men are supposed to. So there's like this generation of 5s who don't want to be 5s. They want to try and be outside shooters and play like they're a small guard and shoot threes. And like, dude, you're leaving the middle wide open for everybody else. Now the other teams can dominate because they got their big guys in the middle where they're supposed to be. And again, that's only going to hurt your team when you're not dominating the boards. So this is not a Doc Rivers thing is my point. I don't want to go like overly into it, and I kind of feel like I already have. But this is not a Doc Rivers thing. This is a Joel Embiid thing. So this is not Doc Rivers' fault that the play that was designed was for Joel Embiid to shoot the 3 to win the game, because that's Joel Embiid trying to change his game from being a dominating force in the middle to a three-point shooter for some reason. And it makes no sense at all. To me, it makes absolute no sense. I don't know what these guys are thinking, but it's what's going on in the NBA. It's a growing trend. Now, flipping over to the game that I watched and spent the most time watching was the Nets and the Celtics. The Nets dominated the game in the first half. They were absolutely, smoking red hot. And then the Celtics came back in the second half and, they fought and clawed their way back in. And then finally, with like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they just took over and never relented the lead. But here's the thing about this. Now, let me put this out there, full disclosure. I have not watched a lot of Boston Celtics games. This really is kind of my first exposure outside of highlights. But, I mean, you never really understand a team until you sit there and just watch them, right? So I sat there and I watched the Celtics in that game last night. And I paid a lot of attention to the officiating, of course. And, of course, the Celtics got a lot of whistles going their way because they're the home team. Because, believe me, there were a lot of calls that should have been called that didn't get called. But, again, Celtics are the home team, so that's kind of the way it goes. So I'm expecting Brooklyn should get the same thing when they go home to Brooklyn. But with that being said, my point being, everybody talks about how great that defense is for the Boston Celtics. So I watched it, and I paid really close attention last night. But I got to disagree again. I got to really that's not defense, folks. That's they're sitting there and they're body checking everybody as they're walking by, as they're setting up picks, as they're going inside. Everybody's slapping a hand, hitting somebody, and it's all away from the ball, pounding. That's what's going on. I mean, they're sitting there and they're just pounding on people left and right, and it's all away from the ball, and they're being physical. And it's almost like they're blocking for a running back to do an end around the outside. And you got the tight end and the guard and the tackle sitting there, and they're all blocking to the left so the running back can run to the right. I mean, it's amazing to watch this, but there's just nothing but picks and body checks everywhere. And in an NBA where every ticky-tack movement gets called a foul, I had a hard time trying to understand why the Celtics didn't get called for a lot more fouls than they did, because if that's how they play defense, and I'll be paying very close attention in game 3, but if that's what these NBA analysts are calling great defense, that's not great defense. That's stuff that should be getting called a foul, and a lot. Because again, they're body checking everybody and they're putting shoulders into everybody. And then they're shooting shots and they're still, after they release the ball, leaning their shoulder down so they can make contact with people and then get some kind of flopping foul. And then it was just garbage. What I saw was garbage. And I think they're getting rid of that stupid flopping rule next year. So now players won't be able to do that. Thank God, because that's just stupid. Allowing a guy to shoot it and then lean forward and hit the defender. And now all of a sudden it's a foul. And then there were a lot of late whistles, and I don't understand, and I'll never understand, how do you shoot the ball and you've already shot the ball and the defender goes up to block the ball and the ball's already released, already gone, and then the defender hits your arm, but the ball's already gone, already been released, didn't hinder your shot, but he hits you after the fact, and yet that's a foul. And again, and if that's a foul and he's already shot and released the ball, and after the player has shot and released the ball, he gets his arm hit, and that's a foul, then how are all these body checks and all this body slamming that's going on with the Celtics' so-called defense, how's that not getting called for fouls? How are they getting away with all that garbage? If that's what people are calling the great defense the Celtics play, because I was watching it, and it's more intense, of course. Other teams aren't doing it for a variety of reasons. Number one, it takes a lot out of you physically, obviously. But, I mean, the other reason is because you should be getting a lot of fouls called on you for doing it. So some way, somehow, the referee association has decided that the Celtics can do this, and I'm not even understanding it. Because, again, that game last night, really the Celtics shouldn't have won. There should have been a lot of players fouling out because of all the body checking, the hitting, the pushing, everything that's going on with the Celtics in the so-called defense. Again, I don't know how it's defense is when a guy sets up a pick and you're on defense, and instead of you running into the pick and getting stopped, you're basically running the pick man over. And yet, nothing's being called. And yet, there was a couple of times where the pick man was actually called for the foul. So, there's just a lot of stuff that I'm watching, and I'm going to pay close attention to Game 3. But I don't see the Celtics as being this team that plays this great, defense. Again, 3 men on KD, and yet they're all slapping him, they're all hitting him, and they're all making sure that for every play that KD makes, he's taking some kind of punishment. They're hitting him in some way, shape, or fashion on every possession. They're running a shoulder into him. They're hitting his legs. They're banging knees. They're making sure that they make some kind of physical. That's not defense. That's harassment. And it's basically a lot of calls that are not being made by referees for some reason. So I am not impressed with what the Boston Celtics and the national media are calling this great stellar defense. Because, again, if that's the case, and if everybody's allowed to be physical like that, then they need to allow everybody to be physical like that. But when I watched Philadelphia and Toronto last night, a lot of the same stuff that I was watching the Celtics do, Toronto wasn't getting away with it. Philadelphia wasn't getting away with it. They were getting called for fouls left and right for doing kind of the same similar things because it got kind of chippy there for a little bit. But they were getting called for fouls for doing the same things that Boston was doing, and yet Boston wasn't getting any fouls called on them. So I'm a little confused. And again, I'll be paying very close attention when it comes to Game 3 between those two teams. Now, flipping over to Major League Baseball really quickly, power rankings are out. And here we go. The LA Dodgers, and I'm going to read you a little synopsis of all the teams and what the national media has to say about them. But their record right now is 9-3. The Dodgers starting pitching was considered the team's biggest concern by far heading into the season. But that group is combined for a 2.33 ERA through the team's first dozen games so far. The New York Mets, ranked number 2, they've got a record of 9-4. Who needs Jacob deGrom? The Mets rotation had a 1.07 ERA through the team's first 10 games, the lowest ever since earned runs were first officially tabulated in 1913. The number 3 ranked team, the San Francisco Giants, their record right now is 8-4. Logan Webb's remarkable streak of 24 starts without a loss was finally snapped in the second game of Tuesday's doubleheader against the Mets when he allowed 3 runs and 9 base runners before recording his 12th out. Number 4, the Toronto Blue Jays. Their record is 7-5. Rival scouts call Toronto the most talented team on paper in the AL East, but there are some cracks in the foundation. Besides, Alek Manoah, the starting rotation has been up and down so far. So, number 5, Chicago White Sox. Their record 6-5. The White Sox have raced to an early lead in the AL Central, where they are heavy favorites to repeat as division champs. The Houston Astros, they are even at 6. The early results of the Houston rotation have collectively been so-so, even though Justin Verlander's return from injury could hardly be going better. Number 7, the New York Yankees. Their record is 7-5. There are positives. Strong starts from Luis Severino and Nestor Cortez on the mound, and Aaron Hicks, DJ LeMahieu, and Anthony Rizzo at the plate. Number 8, the San Diego Padres. Their record is 9-5. This much was pretty certain about the Padres heading into the season. When Fernando Tatis Jr. expected to be sidelined for the first 2 months, they needed their starting pitchers and their highest paid position players to step up. Number 9, the Atlanta Braves. Their record is 6-8. The 5th overall pick back in 2017 out of Vanderbilt, Kyle Wright, reached the majors in 2018, but despite appearing for the Braves each season from 2018 to 2021, he made just 14 starts and pitched just 70 innings in the majors. Number 10, you got the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Their record is 7-6. Wander Franco keeps raising the bar, if that's still possible. Through his first dozen games, the Rays' wonderkin shortstop was hitting .404, .408, and .638 with a homer and 6 doubles. St. Louis Cardinals are 7-3. St. Louis is plodding along while dealing with some rainouts in early going. The Cardinals split a 4-game road series in Milwaukee over the weekend. The Boston Red Sox, they're even at 6. The offense led by Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts and Alex Verdugo showed signs of life as the Red Sox took 4 of 5 games to finish last week. The Milwaukee Brewers, coming in at number 13, their record is 8-5. Milwaukee's record is better than the team has looked so far, as the offense seems a lot like it has much of the past few seasons, just okay. Number 14, you got the LA Angels. Their record's 8-5. The Angels are perpetually hankering for top-tier starting pitching, which is why the early signs of Noah Syndergaard have felt so encouraging. Number 15, you got Seattle Mariners. Their record is 7-5. The Mariners took 2 of 3 from the Astros over the weekend in their first home series of the year, including impressive 11-1 and 7-2 victories sandwiched around Justin Verlander and Julio Rodriguez. Number 16, you got the Colorado Rockies. Their record is 8-4. The Rockies are good. The Rockies, widely considered also Rans yet again heading into 2022, I think that's a typo, have been one of the more pleasant surprises in the sports thus far, winning 8 of their first 12 games while boasting the highest OPS in the sport and averaging more than 5 runs per game. Number 17, the Detroit Tigers. Their record's 4-7. The Detroit offense has continued to flounder with sub-200 averages up and down the roster. Number 18, you got the Chicago Cubs. They're even at 6. Scrappy offense has bolted to the top of the stat page as the Cubs set a franchise single series record when they hit 17 doubles in Colorado over the weekend. Number 19, you got the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 5-8. The offense is off to a slow start, and for some reason, manager Joe Girardi deemed it a good idea to roll out an outfield defense of Kyle Schwarber, Matt Verling, and Nick Castellanos at Coors Field, but the early concerns center Zach Wheeler. Slowed in spring training by shoulder soreness, Wheeler's velocity was way down on Sunday when he had the worst start of his Phillies tenure. Number 20, the Cleveland Guardians. Their record is 6-5. Just as it would have been premature to anoint Stephen Kwan as a young, more contact-oriented Roy Hobbs last week, it would also be premature to declare that the league has caught up with him after a few hitless games. Number 21, the Miami Marlins. They're 4-7. Trevor Rogers finished second in the National League Rookie of the Year voting last season, and Jazz Chisholm was certainly one of the most exciting rookies. Number 22, you got the Minnesota Twins. Their record is 4-8. A Twins offense that looks strong on paper early in the season has been one of the 10 lowest scoring attacks in baseball. Number 23, you've got the Oakland A's. Their record is 7-6. Oakland dismantled its roster, but the team was sitting atop the division after 2 weeks of the season. Number 24, you got the Washington Nationals. They're 6-8. Through the team's first 13 games, Juan Soto and Josh Bell combined for 5 home runs and 21 walks. Number 25, you got the Kansas City Royals. They are 5-5. Bobby Witt Jr. has had a couple of exciting moments at the plate, but all in all, his start as a hitter in the big leagues has been lackluster. Number 26, you got the Texas Rangers. They're 2-9. In a month full of parity to start the MLB season, the Rangers have stood out in how poorly they pitched, compiling one of the highest ERAs in baseball. Number 27, you got the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're 5-7. A signing of Cabrian Haynes to a long-term deal might be the best thing to happen in Pittsburgh this season, but at least they haven't fallen off the cliff in the early going. Number 28, you got the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their record's 4-8. The D-backs average 0.45 runs through their first 11 games. Yeah, that's right, 0.45. Their collective OPS, 0.455, was 258 points below the league average. Number 29, you got Cincinnati Reds. Their record's 2-11. As expected, when you strip your team down of talent, the Reds are off to a terrible start. Cincinnati is last in hitting OPS and second to last in pitching ERA. Baltimore Orioles, they are 4-8. They are in the last of the rankings at number 30. There weren't many expectations for the Orioles this season to begin with, but losing John Means to the 60-day injured list because of strained left elbow was a blow nonetheless. So there are the rankings for Major League Baseball. Now, college football. You got a lot of things going on in college football. There's a lot of stuff happening. You got the transfer portal, which everybody's going crazy about. Positive remarks, negative remarks. But the bottom line is there's a lot of players in the portal. 3,600 FBS players, to be exact, have entered this year already. And it's just a situation where coaches are looking for players who can help their weaknesses and trying to see what they can build as far as a roster goes for the upcoming season. But with the moves that have already been made, coaching and with the transfer portal, we do have rankings for college football as it stands right now. Spring ball happening right now. That's going to be wrapping up within the next couple of weeks for everybody. Some teams are already done. Some will continue for another couple of weeks. But Alabama coming in at number 1. Number 2, you're looking at Ohio State. Number 3, you got the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 4, you got the Utah Utes. Number 5, it's the Texas Aggies. Number 6, you got the Fighting Irish. Number 7, NC State Wolfpack. Number 8, you have Michigan State. Number 9, you have Michigan Wolverines. Number 10, Oklahoma State Cowboys. That's your top 10. Now, starting the second tier of 10, you have Clemson coming in at number 11. The USC Trojans at number 12, which I think is way, way too high. But that's where they are. Number 13, you got the Houston Cougars. Number 14, you have the Oklahoma Sooners. Number 15, you got the Pitt Panthers. Number 16, you have the Oregon Ducks. Number 17, you have the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Number 18, you have the Baylor Bears. Number 19, you have the BYU Cougars. Number 20, the Arkansas Razorbacks. Number 21, you have Ole Miss. Number 22, you have the Kentucky Wildcats. Number 23, you have the Cincinnati Bearcats. And number 24, you have the Tennessee Volunteers. 25, you have the Iowa Hawkeyes. And what I'm going to do is on Monday, I'm going to go through these rankings one more time, and then we're going to talk a little bit about why these teams are currently ranked where they are. I don't really have time to do it today, but we will definitely get into that on Monday. Reason why is because I definitely want to talk a little bit about this because I seem to be the only person that's really talking about it. National sports media, again, being very tight-lipped and not discussing it at all. If you have noticed, I am the only person that's really talking about this. So flipping back to the NFL in a different kind of way, Jerry Jones. The guy who has a lawsuit against him. Here's the headline now. Texas woman drops lawsuit claiming Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones as her father wants DNA testing. All right, here's the story. The 25-year-old Texas woman who sued Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, alleging he is her biological father, has dropped her lawsuit. Alexandra Davis said in court papers filed Wednesday that she now wants genetic testing to verify her claim, the Dallas Morning News reported. Now, Alexandra has just decided that she wants to go ahead and proceed with parentage and DNA testing, said Jay Gray of Davis Lawyers. She wants to remove any doubts that Jerry's her father. Jones' attorney had asked in court filings that the suit be dismissed, but did not address the paternity claim. A representative for Jones declined to comment. Imagine that. A representative for Jones declined to comment. Look, this guy's been paying a lot of money to her and her mother for a long time, and it was all with an NDA so that she couldn't talk about the fact that he was her father, and now she's basically willing to forfeit the money. She wants to prove to the world that he is, in fact, her father. And I don't know what the reasoning is. Maybe she wants him to take ownership and to be a father. I don't know. But for whatever the reason is, she is forfeiting money because there was an NDA in place so that she could never discuss this, bring it up, or even sue him in any way, shape, or form. That's my understanding of the NDA that was in place. She obviously has thrown that out the window, gone all in, but it's not about money for her. She's not trying to get money. She's blowing the lawsuit off now. Now she's just demanding that she gets the opportunity to have parentage and DNA testing taking place. And now you get Jerry Jones and you get the national media who's been absolutely quiet about this. They won't talk about it at all. They're as tight-lipped as tight-lipped can be. It's amazing. All the people these guys bash on and talk bad about and say stuff about, oh, this person's this and this person's that, the morals and the social justice warriors, and they got nothing to say about Jerry Jones dismissing the fact that he has a daughter or potentially has a daughter. And then when he gets the opportunity to talk about it, nobody's talking about it. Nothing. Mum's the word. National sports media, they're all in on the cover-up. But when a player becomes available that's a superstar, all of a sudden, oh, the Dallas Cowboys should go get him. Oh, I'm sure they want to go play for the Dallas Cowboys. But when it comes to this, and again, I'm only bashing the national media because they're the social justice warriors, always running their mouths, always talking about how, they're the moral police and they're the guys that you should listen to and they're the ones that are going to teach you how you should be. Okay, well, how about your boy here that you guys are all fondling over all the time, Jerry Jones? I don't see you talking about that at all. Just saying, it's kind of amazing. All right, final story for today that I want to talk about really quickly. Devin Booker, we all know he got knocked out of game number 2 against the New Orleans Pelicans. And I told you at the beginning of today's show that I was going to have an update for you. So he has a grade 1 hamstring strain. So here's how the story goes. He has a grade 1 right hamstring strain. Players with such an injury historically require approximately 14 to 21 days to recover, which would put Booker's return during this first-round playoff series against the New Orleans Pelicans in question. Actually, it pretty much means it's not going to happen, folks. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, simply as 1, 2, 3, it just means it's not going to happen. So look for Devin Booker to be out for this series and potentially miss maybe game 1 and game 2 of the next series. We'll have to wait and see, but Suns won't have a problem. They're playing the Pelicans. Shouldn't be a big deal. All right, you guys, again, enjoy all of the NBA playoff action. We're, of course, going to break it down, go into it further, depending on what happens. We're also going to talk about those college football rankings, why the teams are ranked where they are. Like I said, I promise we'll do that on Monday. This, of course, is the last show of the week for me. So I will talk to you on Monday. You guys enjoy your weekend.